Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Michael Osman. Today we are going to cover all of the gear that I use while I'm filming. Whether I'm filming a hunt or a product video, we are going to cover it. First thing is my camera, the Sony RX10 Mark IV. I'm going to cover why I like this camera and why I don't like this camera, the things that make it great and the things that make it bad. So let's dive in. Alright, so like I said, my main camera is a Sony RX10 Mark IV. I am currently shooting on a Canon Rebel T7i, which is my wife's camera, and I absolutely hate it. I don't know what it is, I just don't like Canon cameras. There's nothing wrong with them. It's probably honestly like one of those Mathews versus Hoyt type things. I'm sure they're both great brands and great cameras, but I just don't like the Canon DSLR or mirrorless cameras. I don't know what it is, I just can't stand them. Anyway, so the Sony RX10 Mark IV is what you would consider a bridge camera. So it is basically, it's a mirrorless camera, but it only has one lens. So instead of having interchangeable lenses, it just has the one lens on it, which is great because you can do a lot with it. And I can go anywhere from 24 millimeters to 600 millimeters. So I have crazy good zoom ability to be able to get those long shots, whether it's for a photo or if you're videoing and you got a deer or whatever thing is off in the distance. I'm able to get those shots really close up because I have the ability to go all the way out to 600 millimeters. So that's a huge advantage. The thing I like about this camera too is I can shoot 24 or 30 frames per second in 4K. So I get really good crisp footage in that 24 or 30. I usually shoot 24 just because I like the natural look of 24, but you also have the ability to shoot 30 if you want. Also, you can shoot in 1080p up to 120 frames per second, which is really nice. So if you want to get that really good slow motion, you can shoot that 120 frames per second and get that really good slow motion look. Also, you have a high frame rate setting where you can shoot up to 960 frames per second. Now the 960 frames per second isn't the clearest image, and you also don't get any audio when you shoot in that high frame rate setting. So I only use that for a few things, mostly if I'm like shooting like an arrow or something like that and I want to get that really nice slow motion, seeing that broadhead spinning in the air. That's usually when I will use that high frame rate setting, and that's usually not when I'm hunting. It's more if I'm just out shooting and I just want to get that cool slow motion effect. So the photos are really good with this camera. It has 20 megapixels. And so it gets a pretty good photo. It's not like those, like A7R series where it's like that, I don't know, what is like 60 megapixels or something like that. So it's not going to be the most amazing photos, but for what we're using it for or what you might be using it for, you're going to get really good, crisp, clear photos from it. So definitely use it for the photos as well as the video. The other thing I like about it is it has a really good aperture range. So you got your aperture ring right here, and you can go anywhere from 2.4 all the way to 16. So you have a huge range for your aperture. So it's gonna help with the really good low light situations if you wanna get that good low light video or photo. If you're out in the super bright sunlight and you really need to crank it up high so that way you don't have it completely blown out, you can crank it to 16. So you have a good aperture range, which is really nice to have. The other thing that's nice, like I said, is you can go from 24 millimeters all the way to 600 millimeters, which is super nice. Being able to get that big zoom. I mean, I've filmed deer at like 415 yards and you can see the deer really well and nice and clear. And you're not gonna get that with pretty much any other camera unless you're getting a different lens that's, like a big boom lens that's gonna go out to 600 millimeters or 400 millimeters, and even then, it's still not going to be that great unless you're doing that, and that's going to cost a lot of money to get those lenses. The other thing that's really nice is the autofocus on this camera. Now there's a couple other models of this camera. This is obviously the 4th generation, and the 3rd generation did not have the great autofocus that this one has. This basically rivals the Sony a7 III. This camera in general is basically kind of like a Sony a7 III for the most part. It has pretty much all the same exact features that a Sony a7 III has. Has the same megapixels basically, has all the same autofocus and all the same video settings and camera settings. So it's very similar to the Sony a7 III. The big downside between this and the Sony a7 III, and that the main thing that I will say, is the Sony a7 III has a full-size sensor. This camera does not have the full-size sensor. It only has the 1-inch crop. So it's a little bit smaller sensor, so in low light it's not going to be as great, and you're not going to get those super nice wide angle shots that you can get with like a Sony a7 III or any full frame censored camera. So even here when you're at 24 millimeters, because of the crop factor, it's actually going to be like 35 millimeters. The other thing I like about this camera is it has a lot of good ports that you can use. So it has a headphone jack, it's got the microphone jack, it's got an HDMI, and it has a multi-port. So you can actually run a remote on this camera. The only downside is you can't run like the manual focus like you would with like, you know, just a straight point and shoot video camera, which I'm okay with because I don't think the point and shoot cameras really get that great of video. I think you can get a lot better video with something like this. So that doesn't bother me. I do use the Sony remote. I don't remember what it's called, the VPR1 or something like that. You can also get like the JJC something, I don't remember. I'll figure out what it is and I'll make sure to let you know what it is below in the description. But so you can control the power, you can control the record, you can control the zoom. The only thing you can't control is the focus, which if you're shooting an autofocus is not that big of a deal because you don't need it. So you can still do all the filming you want to do if you're using autofocus, and it's gonna work great. I personally shoot in manual focus when I film because it's just way safer, and I don't know, I don't find it that hard to shoot in manual focus, and I feel like I get a better image and I don't have to worry about something stealing my focus when I'm about to try and get a kill shot or something like that. So I use the manual focus anyway, and honestly just to twist the ring to get it in focus just really is not that hard. So I usually shoot manual focus anyway, but I use the zoom and the power button and the record button all the time, and it's just super simple. So that's one thing that's nice about having the multi-port, is that you can still use a remote with this camera. So another nice thing about this Sony RX10 Mark IV is you can shoot in a lot of different picture profiles. You can shoot in standard, you can shoot in like movie, you can shoot in the Cine 1, Cine 2, you can shoot in S-Log 2 even, you can shoot in S-Log 3, so you have a lot of options as far as getting that high dynamic range. You know, when you get to the log footage, it's not going to be quite as great because I believe it just is an 8-bit instead of 10-bit. So the S-Log 2 is okay, but you're going to have a little bit higher ISO, and then you're going to have to go in and get rid of the noise. The S-Log 3 is, I don't know, it'd be pretty hard to use, I think, because it doesn't have that full frame sensor. It makes a big difference. Like I said before, one of the only drawbacks of this camera for me is it doesn't have the full frame sensor. It would be a lot nicer to have the full frame sensor for low light situations and to be able to get those really wide shots. Other drawback is it only has a fold out screen, so it just folds out and tilts. It doesn't have the flip out screen like a lot of cameras do, especially the Canon cameras. It's one of the few things that Canon has that on most of the cameras that is nice. Some of the newer Sony cameras have the flip out screen, which is super nice. I wish this had it, but it doesn't bother me that much because I use a monitor anyway on top of this, so I really don't need the flip out screen. Another drawback is it doesn't shoot 4K in like 60 or 120 frames per second, which not many cameras do. Only like the newest models that have just come out in like the last like year really do. So it's not the end of the world, and honestly shooting 4K and 120 is going to be super big file sizes, so editing that unless you have a really good editing computer is probably going to suck. So it's not the end of the world. Eventually I would like to upgrade to one of those cameras, but I'm going to have to upgrade some other equipment so that way I can edit it and make it look good and not have my computer crash on me while I'm editing, because that would piss me off. The other thing about this camera compared to, you know, like the Sony a7 III or a7S II or a7S III or whatever, say a7R, any of the Sony cameras, is it doesn't have the interchangeable lenses. It just has the one lens, which is okay. But, you know, if for whatever reason you would break the lens, you are screwed. So that kind of sucks. But otherwise, this camera is really great. One of the other drawbacks that I don't like about this camera is the battery. So the battery is this little small battery. I don't even know what it is. FW50, so battery life kind of sucks on it. So you got to have, you know, multiple batteries. You could just plug an external power bank into it, but then you lose your remote capability because you need to be able to plug your remote into that multi-port instead of the battery charger. So that's one drawback. The battery life is not great, but it gets the job done. I mean, I just take some extra batteries with me, and I've never had really any issues because I just take the extra batteries and I don't have to worry about it. Also, low light is okay. It's not great, but it could be better. The ISO on this, I think the max is like, I don't know, 12,800 or something like that. So it gets the job done, but it's not as good as it could be. If it was a full frame sensor, it would be better, and I would prefer it to be that way. But again, for the price point of this camera, it's really about as good as you can get. I mean, this camera I bought used. It had only been used like once, and I think I got it for like 1,200 bucks with some extra batteries and some other stuff. And I can do basically anything with this camera. If I were to go buy a Sony a7 III right now, if I were to go buy one brand new or even used, it's gonna cost me like 1,400 to 1,600 bucks just for the camera. And then I gotta buy lenses on top of that. So I'm looking at, you know, 2 to 3 grand into a camera, and then I still gotta buy SD cards, I still gotta buy all the other equipment. So this camera, getting into filming, is gonna get you in a lot easier. I know a lot of people like the straight point and shoot video cameras because everybody's like, oh, it's way easier as a beginner to start out with a straight shoot, you know, point and shoot camera. Well, you know what? The footage sucks half the time. So just go get a good camera and learn how to use it. It's not that hard. I didn't have a clue how to run a camera when I bought this camera. I didn't know how video worked. And you know what I did? I watched a bunch of tutorials, learned how to shoot video, and guess what? It's pretty simple. Just do it. It's so simple to use a mirrorless or DSLR. It is not hard, people. I don't understand why you think that you have to have just a straight camcorder. Go get a camera that does everything and you don't waste your time and money, and you're gonna get better footage out of this camera than just like a Sony AX53 camcorder. Come on, people. As a society, are we so stupid that we don't know how to use a camera? You don't know how to learn something? We're pretty intelligent people, at least I thought we were. It's not that hard to learn how to use a camera. Pretty simple. Honestly, there's times I've considered switching to a different camera like a Sony a7 III because it's basically the same, but then I would have the option to change lenses, and it would be nice to have that full frame sensor and be able to shoot some different kind of shots because of that full frame sensor with the different lenses. But at this point, I'm kind of like, I think I'll just hold out. I'll wait for now. I think what I want to do is I want to upgrade to the Sony a7 III because that camera is freaking sweet and I want it bad. But it's going to cost me a lot more money, and I'll probably have to upgrade my computer. Even though I have a good computer, from what I've heard, I will probably have to upgrade it to make it faster so I can edit the footage easier. Otherwise, it could be kind of difficult. So I'll probably hold out for that camera, and my wife would kill me if I bought that camera right now. So we're not going to do that. Another option, if the RX10 IV is a little too expensive for you, I think Panasonic makes a camera. I think it's like the Panasonic FZ1000, which is basically like the competitor to the RX10 Mark IV. And when I looked at all the specs of the camera, they're basically identical. So that camera is like $500 or $600 cheaper, and it's basically exactly the same. Has like all the same specs. So that's another camera you can check out if this one's too expensive for you. I would probably purchase it too if I needed to, but obviously I've got this camera now. If this one were to break today and I couldn't afford to get the exact camera, I would probably go buy that Panasonic. I'll make sure that I said the right one. I don't know if I did or not. I'm pretty sure it's the FZ1000. Check that camera out if this one's too expensive for you. Otherwise, we can always talk about other cameras. If you have any comments or anything or any questions about other cameras, make sure to leave them below and let me know. And I'll help you as best as I can to get you in the right camera for you in your budget. Alright, so now that we've covered my camera, we're going to go over another piece of equipment that I really enjoy, and that is the external monitor that I use, the FeelWorld F6 Plus. It's a really nice monitor. You can film and view it in 4K, so it's really crisp and clear. It also has an SD card slot, so you can put a card in there and have a LUT, so if you're shooting with a specific LUT that you like to use for your videos. So it works really well. You can This is the mount that it comes with, and it's okay. You can mount, you know, like a microphone or something on the side, which I've done before, and it works well. It could be a little bit better mount if I wanted to. The monitor's okay. It's pretty much all plastic, but the actual view of it is really nice. The battery life is, you know, it's not bad. You can use a lot of different batteries with it. This is the battery that comes with it, which is NPF330 or F550, something like that. This is the battery. It works okay. You get about an hour of video maybe, or you know, if you leave it in the monitor and leave the monitor on, because obviously you don't want to have to turn it on every time you're turning your camera on. I'd say about 2 hours. You're gonna have to change it out. You do have the ability to switch out to the bigger version of it, same battery, but it's like 3 times the size. So it is a lot heavier, but you can literally film like all day with this battery and never have an issue. You don't have to worry about it. You can leave the monitor on the whole time and it works great. So that's what I did. It was only like, you know, I think I paid 30 or 40 bucks to get 2 of these with a charger with it. So it was well worth the money for that. And like I said, the F6 Plus is a touchscreen version, and the touchscreen works just fine. It's not like a great touchscreen, and I thought it would be nice to have a touchscreen version, but I could live without it. Honestly, once you turn it on and get your settings where you want, you don't really have to adjust much. So you could probably go with like the F5, I think is like another version, or the F6 and not the F6 Plus, which would be cheaper. And it would probably be just fine and you wouldn't have an issue. So that's probably what I would recommend. If I bought another one, I would probably just buy one of the ones that's non-touch screen, because it would be cheaper and you're still gonna get the same good footage and still have the same good view. So when you're filming your hunts, you're not having an issue. It's way easier to make sure you're in focus when you have a bigger monitor like this. This is the 5-inch or 5.5 inch, and I definitely wouldn't go for the 7-inch. Like a lot of people think the 7-inch is, you know, super nice, but 7-inch is really big, and this one is more than big enough, especially if you're self-filming. It's more than big enough to make sure you're still in good focus and have everything in the frame. So definitely don't go with the 7-inch and go with the like 5.5 inch, which I think that's what this is. So I would highly recommend going with a smaller monitor instead of the big one. The next piece of gear I'm going to talk about is an ND filter. I would never ever leave home without it. This is like the single most important piece of gear if you want to make sure you get good footage. This is a K&F Concept ND filter. It works really well. It might not be the highest quality one out there, but it's also not on the low end, so you don't really have like bad visuals when you get it like as dark as you can. A lot of times you'll get like this weird like X kind of pattern in an ND filter if it's like a cheaper one. This one works really well, and this one goes from 2 stops to 5 stops. I might get another one that would be a 6 to 9 stop one this year, so that way if it's super bright out I can use that instead. But this one works really well. I really haven't had much for issues with it, and like I said, it's a variable, so you just twist it and it just darkens on its own, so it works really well. I would definitely get an ND filter if you're getting a camera like the Sony RX10 IV or any mirrorless or DSLR, because it is a lifesaver and it will make your video so much better. So make sure you get an ND filter for your camera. So I also have a polarizer filter from K&F Concept as well. And basically a polarized filter is what it's going to do is it's going to help with like the colors and the shadows. So, or not even the shadows, like the glares essentially. So, you know, if you're shooting, let's say you're shooting some video of some water, and you got the glare of the water from the sun, you can use this polarizer and it will get rid of that glare so you can actually see through the water. Or if you're taking like a video or a picture of the sky and it's just not very blue, then you can use the polarizer and it will help make it a lot more blue, bring the color into it. I don't use it as much as I should, but I also don't take as many photos as I should. I need to get better at it. But the polarizer definitely can make a huge difference in making sure you're getting that good color to it and making sure you're not getting that bad glare. Alright, this is the remote that I use. It is the Sony, I don't even know what it's called. I think it's like the VP-R1 or something like that. It came with the tripod I bought, which is a Sony tripod, and that's what I'm using right now. Honestly, the tripod kind of sucks. It's not that great, but I bought it mostly for the remote. There is another remote that is the exact remote. It's just not Sony brand. It's like the JJC1 1 or something like that. I'll make sure to put that in the description below, so that way if you want to buy one of these remotes, just buy the JJC one, because you don't have to buy the tripod with it, and it's like less than half the price, and it's this same exact remote. It just doesn't say, did I say remote? I don't even know what I just said. It's the same exact remote, but it just doesn't say Sony on it. It does the same thing. This one is nice. It has the zoom in, zoom out. It also has the power button, so you can turn your camera on and off. So you turn your camera on, and then you just leave it like that. You press the power button, it shuts it off. So then when you're ready to film, like let's say all of a sudden you need to turn your camera on, you just press the power button on here, turns it on, and then you also have the record button right here, so you can record and stop recording with that anytime you want. So it works really nice. The only thing you can't do with this remote is you can't control manual focus, but unless you're using a camera that can do manual focus, that has like the VariZoom remote, this remote is super handy and super nice to have, so definitely something that you should use if you can use it. All right, next piece of gear I use a GoPro for a second angle camera. It works just fine. This is the GoPro Hero 5 Black. If I wasn't going to use this one, I would probably be upgrading to at least the 8 or newer. The 5, 6, and 7 are pretty similar. 7 was a little bit better. The 6 was basically worthless. There's really no difference between the 5 and the 6, so definitely wouldn't get the 6. I would get the 5 if you were going to go that old. It still shoots 4K up to like 30 frames per second, and then in 1080 you can shoot like up to 120, that whole thing. Anyway, GoPros, they're great. Like, they work for certain things. You're not going to get the most amazing footage with it, but using it for like a second angle camera is kind of nice. And you could mount it to your bow or something if you want. If you're not using a Tacticam and you wanted to have that other shot angle, you could use the GoPro for that. And if you're just using it to go shoot some fun stuff, like if just for vacations or whatever, it's definitely a good camera for that. It's got this flexible arm on it. This is basically like the only thing I use. I have some other pieces for the GoPro, but it's nice. It has this nice clamp on it, and so I will literally just leave this on there, and I'll just, if I have to, I'll just find a branch and just go clamp it onto a branch for my second angle. Or I'll just, I usually clamp it onto my bow holder. You know, I usually have an arm in the tree that holds my bow, and so I'll just clamp this onto there and make sure it's facing me, and I'm usually good to go with that. So if you're not gonna, like I said, if you're not gonna get the 5, I would definitely go all the way to like the 8, because you have a lot more options on what settings you can use with the 8 and the 9 compared to the 6 and the 7. GoPro works well. It's easy to turn on and off, just a click of a button, but a lot of people do have issues with GoPros and certain things, but just for a really easy second angle camera to turn on, especially if you're self-filming, GoPro does work great for that. Next thing I have is a Joby Gorilla Pod. These work really great because you can use it for your camera or your second angle if you want, and it's flexible. You can put it in if you want. You can wrap it around tree limbs. Works really nice. I got the 5K one, which is like the strongest, nicest one they have, so that way I can use it for my camera. There's times where if I'm out like filming my buddy, I will literally just take this with instead of like an actual tripod, because it's pretty easy to hold a camera with it and keep it steady. So I do like the Joby Gorilla Pod. It works super nice. It's, you know, one of the most popular things that people use if they're somebody who's vlogging or doing whatever, you know, there's doing one of these things. I do like it. It works really well. It's super smooth, so definitely recommend these. I think they're like $100, so they're not the cheapest one, but just buying a nice one, this thing is gonna last forever, so well worth the money. Alright, the pack that I use the Badlands Capture Pack. It works really nice. It's not the biggest pack in the world, but it fits everything I need, and so I definitely liked it last year. Last year was the first year I used it. It worked really well. It has a nice top open for it. I usually put the camera in the top, and then it's got a main compartment where you can put everything else. It's got dividers, so you can, if you have extra lenses or whatever your equipment is, you can move it. You can move the dividers around and make sure that everything's fit exactly as you want. It's got the side pockets. It's got a couple more on the outside for like tripods, and then you can also have these buckles on top. So usually, I can fit a tripod. I can fit my tree camera arm. It's got a rain cover for it. It's really just a nice pack in general. If anything, I would prefer it to be a little bit bigger. If I was going to be doing some sort of hike-in type hunt for like elk or something like that, it might not be quite big enough. But if you're using it for just a daily whitetail type thing. I did some all day sips with last year and was still able to fit some other things like, you know, a sandwich or whatever else in there. And I didn't have any issues with it. So really nice pack, done by Badlands. Badlands makes really good quality packs. They have lifetime guarantees on them. So highly recommend the Badlands Capture Pack. Alright, last thing I think I have is microphones. I use the Rode Video Micro, which is what I'm using right now, currently right here. So this microphone is powered by your camera. It's not a external power like a lot of them are where they have a battery in them. It works pretty well. It's not the highest sound quality you can get, but it does the job pretty well for only being like 60 bucks. It's pretty good, and it's obviously way better than any internal microphone. Never use your camera's internal microphone. They are so bad. So definitely get an external microphone. If you're looking for a cheap one that's going to do something well, the Rode Video Micro is really good for that. If you were going to get a lot nicer external microphone, I would look at like the Rode Video Mic Pro Plus. The Mic Pro is really good too. Both of those run on external batteries. The Mic Pro Plus, the big feature on that over the Mic Pro is the Mic Pro Plus, when you turn your camera on, the microphone automatically turns on with it, where the Mic Pro does not. I'm hoping to upgrade to that one at some point, and that's what a lot of people use, and they work really well. So the Rode Video Micro is a really good entry level. If you want to upgrade, I would go all the way to the Rode Video Mic Pro Plus. It's gonna be like $60 or $300. Do what you can with your budget, but you're definitely gonna get better audio with a better microphone. But this one does work well for now. I'm going to be using a lav mic for the first time this year. This is Movo is the brand. They're another good microphone company, especially for cameras. This one is actually a pretty good deal. It was only like 80 bucks for it, and it's got the receiver and the transmitter and the microphone. It's a good quality microphone, to be honest, and it's a lot cheaper than some of the other ones. And the nice thing about this one is you pair it up, and then once it's connected, you're good to go. And then you can actually adjust the gain on the receiver, so that way when you're filming, like let's say the gain was way too hot on your lav mic compared to your shotgun mic, you can adjust the gain on the receiver of your lav mic and then get it to match where you want it, so that way it's not too hot and not too low, so that way your audio is going to be similar. Also, the other thing that you might want to look into, especially if you're using a mirrorless or DSLR, is one of these splitters. Most mirrorless and DSLR cameras have two channels because it records in stereo. So what this does, this splits the right and the left channel. So now you have two mono channels. So you can record a lav mic into one and a shotgun mic into the other one, and then you have both channels of audio. Now they're both recording in mono instead of stereo. Unless you are listening in stereo, like in headphones, you're not gonna notice the difference. And even if you're listening to that, you're still probably not gonna notice the difference. So you can actually split it, so you can actually have really good audio from the person you're filming, or if you're filming yourself, having the lav mic on them, and then you can switch to the shotgun mic when you want to get like the audio of the deer or the turkey or the elk or whatever you are filming. This cable is like, I think it was $6 or $8 on Amazon. Super nice cable to have, super handy, because then you get those two separate ones and you can pick and choose when you're editing your video which one you want to use to get that really good audio for your video. So I highly recommend getting one of these. I'll link this down below as well. I can't remember the name of it because there's so many things like this, but I will make sure to link it down below, because it's, like I said, it's like $6 or $8, and it will just make a huge difference in the audio for your videos. That's about all I have for today. I basically went over all the gear that I use. I think I got everything covered. I might have missed something, but if I did, it wasn't a major piece of equipment that I would use for doing most of my stuff. I am using a key light here. I don't remember which brand it is. It was a cheap one I got on Amazon. And I have a MacBook Pro that has an i5 processor and 16 gigs of RAM, and it works fine. 4K files are a little slower, but if you edit in proxy, it's way easier and you don't have to worry about it. If you want to learn how to edit in proxy files, just let me know. I'll make a video about that. It makes editing so much easier and so much simpler, and you'll never hate editing ever again when it comes to rendering things. Make sure to leave me a comment, or if you have any questions about anything you're going to purchase, make sure to leave me a message or a comment so I can help you get the best equipment for what you're doing. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell if you really enjoyed the video. If you don't, it's not going to hurt my feelings. If you don't subscribe, it's not going to hurt my feelings either, because that's just the way it is. Don't subscribe if you don't like the person. I don't care. See you next time.